प्रणाम महाराज।
Namaskar. Welcome.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So, time to start. We'll say our prayer. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya Aviravirmayedhi. Om Shanti 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 Hare Om. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavi viriritam kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaatatam bhuvi grinantiye bhurida janaha. Let we be protected. Let we be nourished. Let we strive with energy and vigor. Let our study be enlightening and not give rise to hostility. Om peace, peace, peace. Lead us to truth and not to untruth. Lead us to enlightenment and not ignorance. Lead us to immortality and not death. Let the self-manifest Atman grow in me. Om peace, peace, peace. Your nectar-like words and warm and inspiring life stories, eulogized by learned sages, are indeed eradicator of shoots of ignorance. These are auspicious to hear and propitious to inculcate in one's own life. Those who take these words to the world are indeed great benefactor of the world. So we are studying Sri Ramakrishna and his divine play. In the world we see a mother, when she cooks something good, she wants to share with her children. It has no reason why. That gives joy in her heart. Similarly, it is very difficult to convey what are the impulses by which an incarnation shares the highest joy, the bliss, with ignorant people like us. It is very difficult to understand. But with that example, we can just have an inkling that out of compassion, enormous compassion, ocean of compassion, that is the cause of his sharing with us. We saw in the heart of Buddha also similar compassion. It is without any rhyme and reason. We saw the same thing in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Out of compassion, he would distribute this love and devotion to all. We are sleeping, so mother wakes up the child and tells us, now eat, it is time for eating. Similarly, we are enjoying this world, we are sleeping as it were. It is the compassion of God that brings us up, and gradually He makes us competent, makes us able to understand what we really are. We are not ordinary mortals. We are children of immortal bliss. And that is conveyed by the incarnation, that you are not small fry, you are small being, small minnow, rather you are the divine. So for that he chooses some instruments to convey this idea, because we are doubtful. First we have doubt that is it possible that there is something more enjoyable than this? It is impossible. But he says, no, it is possible. And then we don't know how to go about it. So he tells that means also. Sambhavana, abhavana. First we don't think about it. And when we think it is impossible. But he convinces that no, this is the only goal of life, to realize God. And God can be realized. And this is the only goal of life. Otherwise, eating, drinking, merrymaking is trifle for 2 days. How much one can enjoy? So this, to convey this, he requires some instrument. And we are fortunate to have such an instrument of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda. Right from the beginning, Sri Ramakrishna could understand that Narendra is not an ordinary person. He incarnated to convey, to support him. So right from the beginning, he started teaching him accordingly, to mold his character so that he was a competent instrument to convey his message. So we find that Narendra, like us, also had some doubts. He did not believe in Kali, Mother. He did not believe in Advaita, but Sri Ramakrishna made him to understand that. Last time we saw that he touched Narendranath and everything transfigured. Everything looked like, oh, everything is Brahman. Even the cup, saucer, road, horses, human being. When he would eat, Mother would serve, but after taking few grass, he would stop. That this is food is me and I'm eating, how funny. And not only that, after that it became like a dream. To convince himself, he used to bang his head against the railing of a pond. It is called Hedua. So this we have already heard. Now, not only he was convinced, he was instrumental to convey to others. So we'll read today that incident. If Paul is there?
Yep.
Go ahead.
So we're at number 16. The author has an eventful day with Narendra. On another occasion,
Swami Sharanandaji, author of this book. Yes.
On another occasion, Narendra described a wonderful incident to us. He told us about it in the winter of 1884, when we were well acquainted. We believe that the incident must have taken place during this period so we are relating it to the reader here. We remember going to Narendra's house at Gaur Mohan Mukherjee Street in Simla on that day a little before noon and staying till 11 at night. Swami Ramakrishna was with us. Since our first meeting, we had felt a divine attraction to Narendra, and this feeling was intensified 1,000-fold that day. Before this, we understood the Master to be a knower of God or a perfected soul. But on that day, Narendra's inspired talks brought a new light to our hearts. We realized that the extraordinary events recorded in the lives of Jesus, Chaitanya, and other great teachers of the world, which we had studied but disbelieved, had parallels in the Master's daily life. With merely a touch, or his desire that it be so, the Master released from bondage those who had taken refuge in him and granted them devotion. He granted them samadhi.
Now the question is, those who take refuge at his feet means what? Is he partial for that? Partial to those who have taken refuge at his feet? Not really. Those who have opened up their heart, they take refuge. It is not his partiality. He gives to all. Sri Ramakrishna would say, the breeze is already blowing. You need to unfurl your sail. So when we take refuge at his feet, that means we are open up to his teachings. Then we take it. Otherwise, we have disbelief. And then not only that, we have many doubts. So, when one takes refuge at his feet, gradually those doubts will vanish. So it is not partial, rather that is natural. Even it is said that until or unless you ask and cry for food, mother also will not give, because she knows it is not good for feeding a baby when it is time is not mature. So we should open up. That is the idea.
He granted them samadhi, thus endowing them with divine bliss. Or he diverted the course of their lives into a spiritual channel so strong that they attained a vision of God immediately and were blessed forever. We remember that in the evening, Narendra took us for a walk in Cornwallis Square. On the way, he told us of divine experiences that he had experienced by the grace of the Master. He was absorbed within himself for a while and then finally expressed his inner bliss with his heavenly voice. Gora bestows the nectar of love. Jar after jar he pours it out, and still there is no end. Sweetest Nitai is summoning all. Beloved Gora bids them come. Shantipur is almost drowned, and Nadia is flooded with love.
So this is a song. Gora means Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because his complexion was very fair, that's why he was also referred as Gaur and sometimes Gora. So the song is Prem Dhan Bilaye Gura Rai Chan Nitai Dake Ai. That means Nitai means his companion Nityananda Mahaprabhu. So would call people, please come, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that is Gauranga Mahaprabhu, is distributing the greatest resource or bliss, that is the love for God. Those who are eager, please come. Tura keni bire aaye. And then prem koloshe dhale tabu na furai. That he is pouring picture after picture, but still it is never exhausted. Preme Shantipur Dubu Dubu Node Bheshe Jaye. So Shantipur and Nadia, two places are there. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born in Nadia, in West Bengal. So Node means here Nadia, like it is already flooded. So therefore, please come. Gaur Premier Hillolete Node Bheshe Jaye. By his love, everything is flooded. Even Nadia is also flooded. So come and take this love. Yes.
17. Narendra relates an amazing story. When he had finished singing, Narendra gently soliloquized, "He is actually distributing love, devotion, knowledge, liberation, and whatever one desires. Gora, Sri Ramakrishna, is bestowing upon us whatever he wishes. What wonderful power." He was silent for a while and then continued. "One night I was lying on my bed with the door bolted. Suddenly he attracted me, or rather the soul that lives in this body, and drew me to Dakshineshwar. He talked with me about various topics, gave me advice, and finally allowed me to return home. He can do anything. This Gora of Dakshineshwar can do anything."
So Swamiji, Narendranath, that time he was in his room, but Sri Ramakrishna attracted and he had to rush to Dakshineshwar. It's about 5 miles from his house. And sometimes Sri Ramakrishna would come. Once it happened, Kedarnath, who used to live in Dhaka, now it is in Bangladesh. So when Kedarnath came, he mentioned that you cannot hide you from me anymore, because I have seen you in Dhaka in this form. So Narendra also was there. And Narendra said, "How can I disbelieve? Because many a times Sri Ramakrishna visited me also. Otherwise he would have rejected this." So Sri Ramakrishna also visited Narendra's place, and sometime he would attract Narendra. So maybe in subtle form, because here it is not mentioned that he walked all through. But once it happened that he was rushing, and even he left his slipper on a stack of hay, because he was not mindful of his bodily consciousness. So anyway, this is the attraction that we find. But this attraction happens when we are ready. If we are busy with so many things of the world, so mother also says, okay, let him play. When time comes, when he'll be hungry, he'll come for food. Like that. God also thinks, okay, you are busy with worldly things, let you be busy. But when you are hungry, you'll come and ask for your food. Yes.
18. Narendra's unusual experience at the author's house. The evening shadows melted into a darkness so deep that we could not see each other. But it was not necessary to do so. Narendra's fiery spiritual feelings penetrated our hearts, creating a divine intoxication that left us reeling. We felt as though the real world that we had perceived for so long had disappeared into a dream. We then realized the truth of what worldly people believe to be nothing but a fabrication. The beginningless, infinite God had become manifest as a finite human being out of his unconditional grace and was destroying the bondage of jivas and setting in motion the wheel of Dharma. We did not notice how the time passed, but suddenly we heard the bell strike 9. Reluctantly, we prepared to take leave of Narendra, but he said, "Let us go. I'll accompany you for a short distance." As we walked, we began discussing a similar topic, which absorbed us until we reached our home in Champatala. We realized that it was not right for us to have let Narendra come such a long distance. We brought him inside, gave him some refreshment, accompanied him to his home, and then returned home once more. We vividly remember another incident. When Narendra entered our house, he suddenly stood still, exclaiming, "I have seen this house before. It's amazing. I'm familiar with its corridors, rooms, and everything." Elsewhere, we have told the reader that Narendra sometimes had such experiences, and what he said was their cause, so we will not repeat that here.
So one thing here, that infinite grace, unconditional grace, and was destroying the bondage of jivas. And when Swamiji was in America, many times he would think that, what should I talk about next morning in his lecture? But then he would get inspiration. So it happens to such a soul. Even for ordinary people also, we find some people get inkling by the dream, what is to be done. Because Narendra, like a soul like Narendranath, was so pure that he remembered his previous incarnations. Swamiji another time said, it is like a film, it goes on playing. So one show, and then after that show, again when it starts for the second show, it starts again. And also he said that if you want to draw a line straight, one day it will come back to it, to that origin. And it is scientifically also true. Today, science also thinks that way, that we cannot draw a straight line, rather it curves in one point and it comes to its original place. So, he must have been inspired what he would do in the next incarnation. That is why he knew where he was, that familiarity was there. So anyway, we go forward to the next chapter, the Master's Methods of Testing and Narendranath. As we know, Sri Ramakrishna would take examination. He would test his disciples. Sometimes he would weigh the hands, or sometimes he would see the signs and symptoms of his disciples. And Sri Ramakrishna would funnily tell also that, how farmers test their bullocks. They touch their tail. If the bullock lies down, then they don't buy that one. But as other bullock, when you touch the tail, it would break into action. So he would compare similar thing with Narendranath, because he had that spirit and purity. So Master also tested him in various ways. Yes, go ahead.
We have already explained how, from their first meeting, the Master saw extraordinary signs in Narendra and ascertained that he was an aspirant of the highest caliber. He then bound Narendra to him with a cord of selfless love, tested him at times, and began to teach him various aspects of spiritual life.
Yeah, he would say that this Brahmin of Dakshineshwar has bound me with love. He would say that Sri Ramakrishna is Love personified. Because he loved so much and he felt that even love of family members are not equal to that. Such a deep love. And this is, this is to be felt. This is to be realized. Religion is not in doctrines and dogmas. Religion is in realization. And Narendranath realized this. And that is why he said that Janamo Janamo Das Dohakar. That means I am the slave of you both. That means Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. Birth after birth, I am your servant. So, yeah, go ahead.
1. The Master's distinctive way of testing human character. When the Brahmo Samaj was on the verge of splitting over the difference of opinion regarding the Kuch Bahar marriage, the Master told Keshav, "You've taken anybody and everybody without testing them, merely to increase your society's numbers. So is it any wonder that your group is dissolving? I never accept anyone without testing them." It is truly amazing how the Master tested his devotees in various ways, with or without their knowledge. How did he who presented himself to society as an illiterate person master unseen and unheard of methods for gauging human character? Was it due to a re-emergence of knowledge acquired in his past lives? Did this ability arise from the extrasensory vision and omniscience that he had attained through sadhana as the rishis had? Or did that wisdom become manifest by virtue of his being an incarnation of God, as he declared himself to his intimate devotees? Although ideas such as these come to mind, we shall not discuss them at present. We shall describe events as accurately as possible and leave the reader to form his or her own conclusion.
Yeah, to Sri Ramakrishna, all devotees or whosoever visited him, he used to say that it's like glass case. I can see inside and outside of the person. So it is because of yogic insight. Not only that, you see, in practical life also we find, like a child, he has taken something without permission. And he's saying that I have not taken. But mother knows that he must have taken it. So in ordinary life also we find similar experience. But for Sri Ramakrishna it was completely different. He could see the hidden factors. And it's not occult power. Sri Ramakrishna would not use occult powers, but his insight would reveal the truth, whatever he wanted to know. So it is to help devotees. It is not for his own gain or just to discard someone. That way it helped devotees, because Sri Ramakrishna would take corrective measures. One boy was there, Nitya Gopal. So he warned him, Sadhu Savdhan, beware, my boy. But he could not, and later he was fallen. So this is these are some examples that we find Sri Ramakrishna would take help of his insight to warn or to lift someone up. It's not his personal gain. Yes.
2. The Master's general method of examination. The reader will understand the uniqueness of the means that the Master used to evaluate human character if we mention some relevant events. But before we begin, we should explain certain things regarding those methods. When a man first came to the Master, he observed him very closely. If he felt attracted to the visitor, he talked about spiritual matters with him and asked him to visit occasionally. As the days passed and the visits continued, unknown to the visitor, the Master would examine the formation of his body and his limbs, the nature of his thoughts, the degree of his attachment to lust and gold, the magnitude of his worldly desires, and the extent to which the visitor's mind was being drawn towards him. After the Master had collected these data, by keenly observing the man's movements, actions, and conversations, he arrived at a firm conclusion about the visitor's latent spirituality. Thus, the Master became convinced of a man's character after having seen him a few times. If the Master felt that he needed to know hidden facts about the man's inner nature, he would then use his subtle yogic vision to learn about them. He once told us about this. When I'm alone in the early hours of the morning, I think of your spiritual welfare. The Divine Mother then shows me how far one devotee has advanced on the spiritual path, why another cannot make progress, and so on. From this, however, do not conclude that his yogic power was active only at that time. Other conversations indicated that he could ascend to high states of spiritual consciousness and obtain similar visions at will. He told us, just as by merely looking at a glass case one can see all of its contents, so I can know the inmost thoughts and tendencies, indeed everything about someone, merely by looking at that person.
Yes, the main idea is whatever one thinks, his body, his mind also gets transformed like that. So this way also, see, in general, people also can assess something, but one may not understand the innermost thoughts and feeling because he has not trained in that way. Suppose you enter, or a patient enters into an orthopedic surgeon, a doctor's room of orthopedic surgeon. So immediately knows that where the problem is because he's so trained. Similarly, an engineer, when he sees a building, oh, it is good or bad or whatever, he assesses that building, he has some opinion. What I'm saying that this insight also grow in worldly affairs. It's not very unusual. But what is extraordinary in the case of Sri Ramakrishna is that he would see inside and outside. It is to help the person. So, that's why, and sometimes he would ask, what do you think about me? So the answer also would reveal the nature of that devotee. Even he asked M, he asked many people. Yes.
3. The Master's ecstasy when he first meets advanced souls. Although the Master adopted the general method described above to judge human character, he modified it to some extent for special devotees and applied other methods also. We have seen that he met his special devotees for the first time while inspired by the divine and in a high spiritual state. Elsewhere, we have mentioned in this book that the Master's body and mind had become wonderful instruments to hold and transmit subtle spiritual power by virtue of his extraordinary sadhana. This was literally true. We noticed that when the Master met a devotee who was imbued with a particular spiritual mood, suddenly the Master's mind would be divinely inspired to assume the same mood. And when he found that devotees who came to him had already ascended to a spiritual plane by virtue of their own efforts and of good tendencies from past lives, the Master's mind would go to those realms as soon as such devotees arrived in order to ascertain the facts of those devotees' inner lives. The reader will understand what we mean by recalling our earlier narration of the Master's experiences during Narendra's first visit to him.
Not only that, in the case of Gopalsma, Gopaletma, that means a lady of Kamarhati used to worship God as baby Gopal. So as soon as that lady would come to Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna would transform into Gopal. And that lady also would address him as Gopal. And sometimes he would, though he was grown up, about nearly 6 feet, but he would sit at the lap of that lady. And that lady also was unhesitatingly would accept Sri Ramakrishna as Gopal. So this is extraordinary trait that we find in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. How that happens? You know, in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan said, Yo yatha mam prapaddante tangs tathaiva bhajamyaham. I respond according to the worship of our devotees. And eagerness of Sri Ramakrishna that we have already discussed, that when that Arati, you know, they have many kinds of symbols and they make a lots of noise. So that time he would go to the roof of Kothi Badi and would call, "Oh my devotees, where are you? Oh my children, where are you? I cannot talk to these ordinary people. My throat is pursed talking to them. Please come." So this attraction that we find would bring many highly advanced devotees. And accordingly, Sri Ramakrishna would behave and converse with that devotee. So this is extraordinary feature that we find in an incarnation. Yes.
5. 1. Using physiognomy to determine inner tendencies. The Master ascertained newcomers' predominant tendencies by observing their physiognomy and other physical characteristics. Even though when it is acted upon, every thought when it is acted upon leaves an impression on the brain and affects particular parts of the body. Modern physiology and psychology have proven this fact to a great extent, substantiating this belief that the Vedas and other scriptures have always affirmed. Hindu philosophical and religious books unanimously agree that the mind builds the body, and that one's physical form changes according to one's good or evil thoughts and propensities. Many common proverbs, therefore, concern ascertaining a person's character by examining the body and limbs. That is why during ceremonies such as marriage or initiation, it is considered necessary to examine the hands, feet, and other body parts of the bride or disciple.
Yes, so this is one way of examining the sincerity of that devotee. It is not that pearl is thrown in front of a swine. So that's a proverb. It's not to demean anything. The thing is, it is so subtle. It is not comprehended by ordinary souls. Therefore, our gurus try to teach how to lift oneself first. And when the time is ready, then they impart spiritual knowledge. So these are the incidents that happened in Sri Ramakrishna's life. See, another incident is coming to me, that Rakhal, later Swami Brahmanandaji, Sri Ramakrishna would consider him as his child and himself as his mother. So as soon as Rakhal would come, he would be full of affection, and sometimes he would lie down, putting his head on his lap. Even sometimes he would imitate like feeding, breastfeeding with the Rakhal. So this is extraordinary behavior pattern that we find in Sri Ramakrishna. But he took it with proper assessing what kind of devotee that approached him, and he reacted accordingly. Yes. Go ahead. Paul? Disconnected?
They don't appear on the meeting anymore, Swamiji.
Disconnected. Okay, so I'll read because most probably he got disconnected till he comes back. So this is page number 806. Although the master adopted the general method describing above to judge human character, he modified it to some extent for special devotees and applied other methods also. We have seen that he met his special devotees for the first time while inspired by the divine and in a high spiritual state. Elsewhere, we have mentioned it in this book, that the master's body and mind had become wonderful instruments to hold and transmit subtle spiritual power by virtue of his extraordinary sadhana. This was literally true. We noticed that when the master met a devotee who was imbued with a particular spiritual mood, suddenly the master's mind would be divinely inspired to assume the same mood. And when he found that devotees who came to him had already ascended to spiritual plane by virtue of their own efforts and of good tendencies from past lives, the master's mind would go to those realms as soon as such devotees arrived in order to ascertain the facts of those devotees' inner lives. The reader will understand what we mean by recalling our earlier narration of the Master's experiences during Narendra's first visit to him. That we have already read about this. And life of Sri Ramakrishna was God driven. It is not his will that he would carry his body to somewhere. It is divine will that would take him from one place to another. So incarnations are like that. So we go to the next. The Master did not exempt his intimate devotees from the methods that he usually used to evaluate human character when he was present in the normal plane. He applied the same methods equally and observed those devotees' movements, conduct, and conversations. He was not satisfied until he had tasted Narendra in this way. So it is extremely important that the reader understand the Master's methods of evaluation. These tests can be divided into 4 main categories. We have introduced this subject earlier. Now we shall explain those 4 categories and provide examples. So this is the introduction for the categories, so we'll continue. The Master ascertained newcomers' predominant tendency by observing their physiognomy and other physical characteristics. Every thought, when it is acted upon, leaves an impression on the brain and affects particular parts of the body. Modern physiology and psychology have proven this fact to a great extent, substantiating this belief that the Vedas and the other scriptures have always affirmed. Hindu philosophical and religious books unanimously agree that the mind builds the body and that one physical form changes according to one's good or evil thoughts and propensities. Many common proverbs, therefore, concern ascertaining a person's character by the examining the body and limbs. That is why during ceremonies such as marriage or initiation, it is considered necessary to examine the hands, feet, and other body parts of the bride or disciple. So like, one pathologist was telling that how I examine. I see the finger, that means whether the person is anemic or not anemic, all kinds of things. So even physiology also is like that. It is not surprising that the Master, believing as he did in the scriptures, should have examined the shape of the body and the limbs of his disciples. Sometimes in the course of conversation, he told us so many facts and on this subject, and we were dumbfounded and we wondered where he had obtained so much information. We thought that perhaps in ancient times there was a tome on that, and that he had learned those things by reading that book or hearing it recited. This thought, however, is groundless. We have neither seen nor heard of such a book. Amazed, we listened to his descriptions of how the formation of each limb and sense organ of men and women resembled everyday objects, and how each resemblance had a meaning For example, the master said about human eyes, some people have eyes like lotus petals, some like a bull's eyes, and some possesses the eyes of yogi or of a god. Those who have eyes like lotus petals are endowed with good and spiritual tendencies, like we can see in the feature of Swami Vivekananda, that his eyes were so lustrous and like lotus. Those whose eyes are like a bull's have a strong sex drive. A yogi's eyes have an upward look and a reddish tinge. Divine eyes are not very large but are long and stretched nearly to the ears. Those who glance to the side or look from the corner of their eyes while talking are more intelligent and the average person. So all these are various features and also the sign and symptoms of the various people. We also spoke of the general formation of the body. Those who have a devotional temperament have a naturally soft body, and the joints of their hands and feet are flexible. And if their bodies are lean, their muscles and tendons are so shaped that they do not appear angular. To ascertain whether a person's mind was inclined towards good or evil, he would weigh the person's hand and forearm from the fingers to the elbow in his own hand. Like I already said, like this, he would weigh like this. If he found the weight to be less than usual, he concluded that the person's mind had positive tendencies. We have already mentioned that when Swami Premananda first went to Dakshineshwar, the master weighted his forearm, because at that time he did not say why he did so. We could not mention anything about it at that point. But we now know that the master used this method to determine whether a person had good or evil tendencies, which we learned another day from the following incident. And later Sri Ramakrishna would say that Premananda, that means had a portion of Radha. So that's why his name also was given Premananda. He was full of love. And he used to feed devotees with his heart's content, as if he would pour out his heart for devotees. When the master was living in the Kashipur garden house and suffering from cancer, the author's younger brother, Charuchandra Chakravarti, came to visit him one day. The master was very pleased to see him. He made him sit nearby, questioned him about various things, and gave him many spiritual instructions. When the author came in, the master asked him, "Is this your younger brother?" When the author admitted that he was, the master said, "He is a fine boy. He is more intelligent than you are. Let me see if he has good or bad tendencies." Saying so, the master held the boy's forearm with his own hands and, weighing it, said, "Yes, he has good tendencies." He then asked the author, while pointing to his brother, "Shall I draw him?" He meant, should he draw his mind away from the world and turn him towards God? What do you say? So Sri Ramakrishna asked that. The author replied, "It would be nice, sir. Please do so." The master thought for a while and then said, No more. I have already taken one. If I take another, your parents, especially your mother, will be very grieved. I have displeased many a Shakti, that means mothers, in my life, so no more now. The master then gave further instructions to the author's brother, offered him some refreshments and bade him goodbye. And later he came to USA and studied here. So that's a different story, but Sri Ramakrishna was considerate of the parents also, that it shows. The master used to say, like the formation of the limbs, physiological functions such as sleep, evacuation, and other ordinary actions differ according to people's particular mental tendencies. Experienced observers can find indications of human character in those things. For example, people don't all breathe the same way while sleeping. A worldly person breathing one way, a person of renunciation another. While answering the call of nature, the former's urine slants to the left while flowing at the latter's to the right. The master told us an incident to illustrate this subject. During Mathur's time, a man named Hanuman Singh was himself hired as a temple guard at Dakshineshwar. He commanded great respect among the other guards, not only because he was a famous wrestler, but also because he was a steadfast devotee of Mahavir Hanuman. Once another wrestler came to Dakshineshwar to challenge him to wrestling match. The winner would assume Singh's position. Although Hanuman Singh could see his opponent's gigantic body and his physical strength, he did not shy away from the competition. A day was fixed. Mathur and some others were to judge the match. A week before the day of the competition, the challenger began to eat huge quantities of nutritious food and to practice various physical exercises. Hanuman Singh, however, followed his usual routine. He bathed early in the morning, repeated the mantra of his chosen deity throughout the day, and ate his only meal in the evening. People thought that Hanuman Singh was frightened and had given up hope for a victory. The master was very fond of him. So the day before the competition, he said to him, "You haven't made your body fit by exercising and eating nutritious food. How will you compete with the new wrestler?" Hanuman Singh bowed down respectfully and replied, "Master, if you bestow your grace on me, I'll definitely win. One cannot gain strength merely by eating a huge quantity of food. One must digest it." I secretly checked the fishes of the new wrestler and found that he has been eating food beyond his digestive power. The master later told us that Hanuman Singh defeated his opponent. So, incident just to show these signs and symptoms. The master also told us various things about the formation of a woman's limbs, similar to what he said about the shape of a man's body. Observing these, the master indicated that some women had Vidya Shakti or the divine nature, and some had Avidya Shakti or a say demonic nature. He said, those with a divine nature eat and sleep little. Their desire for sense enjoyment is also less. Their hearts are filled with joy when they hear about God and when they talk about Him with their husband. They protect their husbands from base tendencies and sinful acts by giving them spiritual inspiration. They help their husbands in every way so that they may eventually be blessed by realizing God. So we understand all these are to be cultivated. So these are incidents that we'll stop here. The time is up. And whatever this is, whatever one may take, that's good. But only physical trait is not that important. Important is mental tendency. Physical trait may be different, but if mental tendency is good, so one should go ahead with it. So we'll see our prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all. Thank you.
Pranam.
Pranam Maharaj, thank you.
Namaste.
Jai Swami.
Swamiji.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaskar.